So one of our top questions was around the origin of the Cardano Triad. And so we're kind of looking back as to why and how Emurgo, IOHK and the Cardano Foundation came into being.
Great question. So I might be the wrong person to basically ask that question to, as I was not there. However, how it happened and what actually happened and the design principles are very clear. When you want to do something as grand as changing the world and building a trinity or building operational capacities to do that, you need different cultures, you need different operational architecture, and you need different mindsets. So the first thing you need when you take a step backward and look at what we learned from the blockchain 1.0 and 2.0 was we needed interoperability, scalability, and sustainability. So the idea was to take a step backward and have an academic, scientific, rigid approach. And that meant that an entity needed to be formed which has access to academic, an army of scientists who really can shape the foundational research, and an army of engineers who can take that research and apply that to code. And that is what IOG or IOHK has been doing. And they've been doing an amazing job in shipping that and doing that translation into the foundational layer of the Cardano blockchain. So what you also need is you need commercialization, education, and launch pads. And that's the three areas which Emurgo is responsible for, and where they've been really driving that forward in terms of how do we actually get scalable education, commercialization on the Cardano blockchain, but also around these launch pads and how these launch pads is going to put power into the ecosystem and into the builders on the platform.
And how do we think how do the organizations interact? So kind of on a day-to-day basis, how do you interact with each other? That's kind of one of the questions as well. And maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So maybe before we come to that question, we can speak about a little bit around what the foundation, so the last entity. So when you think about it, on the journey from, let's say, a federated network all the way to a distributed, decentralized network, you need different things at different stages. And in the last 14 months, we are now the most decentralized blockchain in the world. And if you look at what the stake pool operators has actually achieved and how the whole governance and the infrastructure around that is already running, I think we can be very proud. The Cardano Foundation's role in this as the third entity in the Trinity is really to bring some clarity around three questions. The first one is we are asking people to trust a database, a decentralized database which they don't control, and we want them to trust that with their enterprises and their business critical and life critical applications. If it's a hospital, for instance, we are asking them to trust that is so predictable that whatever happens, whatever oversight they work under, that an oversight can be done, an audit can be done. And last but not least, we ask them also to say, what are the odds that this blockchain as it is today will also exist in the generations to come? And that's one of the roles the Cardano Foundation really has. It's about being this custodian of an ecosystem who is in the end is a self-running, self-governing entity. And we will probably be one of the last parts of the Trinity standing in the function as we hold. So you'll see that more entities will come together. So it will be much more than a Trinity. The Emurgo and IOHK will change slight direction based on the maturity of the ecosystem, but they will always be involved and they will just, add different values at different stages of the maturity.